If you look at humanity as a whole, humanity is better this year than it was 5 years ago, than it was 10 years ago, than it was 15 years ago. Yes, there's uncertainty, yes, there's volatility. There always was. But the rate of progress and the rate of change makes the world, I think, truly exciting at the moment.
It certainly feels like a great time of great opportunity. There are new needs and new markets for the insurance industry to serve and expand into. But how are we doing at it, and how can we make the most of it? Hello, I'm Ross Campbell, leading on digital at Gen Re and your host for this podcast series. Join me on an audio adventure that restrings highlights from our global research into compelling considerations for the future, for discussion and exploration with you, your team, your company, and our innovation partners. Episode 6 of 10.
The way how we think about product and the way how we think about what we offer to our customers has totally changed in the last 10 years. It's really moved from essentially ideas cooked up financially by actuaries and then thrown out to market to see if we would find an audience, to turning that on its head and creating proposition capability that starts with driving deep insight into customers' financial lives and financial needs, and then not quite co-creating, but intensively testing and retesting with customers what would work for them and what would make a positive difference in their financial lives. So we construct products very, very differently today from how we used to a generation ago.
And that's probably a very good thing. But what are we not doing yet? And where is the gap?
If I look at the industry's level of penetration over the last 20 or 30 years, it's not really changed. So I think we're an industry that needs to take a long, hard step back and a look at that and make sure that when we're looking at the next decade, we're not really kidding ourselves.
Insurance leaders around the world are recognizing the need to respond to evolutionary and market changes and the emerging needs that emanate from this.
In general, consumers and societies expect from business something different, to be just focused on profits and commerciality. I think that model has now shifted. If you may have seen that in the 80s and 90s, but consumers today look at organizations that are actually looking to do good. I think we have a very strong social responsibility as well to work with governments. There are a number of social issues facing society. One very big issue is that's led by demographic change. In the UK, we're an aging society, and the headlines always talk about the social care, and it's been talked about for a long time now, over a decade at least. And I think the government's to some degree admitted that there isn't an easy solution to this, and a number of key stakeholders have said that actually there needs to be a public-private partnership. It hasn't quite been resolved. So there's some of those issues where I think insurers can play a really strong and active role.
I think we are slow as an industry to respond to the needs of the ageing population. We don't have a good solution for people at the point of retirement. We don't have a good solution for people as they go into long-term care. So as an industry, there is a massive geopolitical demographic trend that we haven't yet properly responded to.
We're seeing more and more people as a percentage who are 60 and above, and certainly the fastest growing demographic in the United States is 80 and above. Same is true in many countries in Asia. So what are we doing to really serve this fastest growing demographic in the world? Practically nothing across all consumer segments. People are living longer, working less in a world of less risk. Living longer, working less in a world of less risk. What does that mean for a reinsurer, for an employer, for someone reaching the active aging or retirement years, for someone in the gig economy, for all those businesses that have to basically cater to this free time, for universal income, for societies in general? And as we continue to eliminate risks from our health domains, from our work domains, from driverless cars and other types of inventions, what are we going to do with that value creation? It has to be channeled towards positive good. We're unlocking human potential by letting people live longer and work less and be more safe. And to unlock that human potential towards other good things is just going to fuel maybe a snowball of more innovation.
Many are quick to view insurance as an industry that rests in a comfort zone. It's one reason why it's a good time to respond with meaningful innovation that meets these emergent needs. And not only in the area of longevity. Here's a few more.
I think the dynamics of households is very different now. We've got far more self-employed people now than we ever did, say, 10 years ago. Do I think the protection market fully understands their needs and actually meets their needs if something happened to them. Not really. I think there needs to be far more product innovation to help those self-employed people.
We have robotification of the manufacturing and other kind of aspects of the industrial age that's sort of going away, and other interest on the side of humans at very large rates. We're talking about 50% being freelancers by 2020 in the United States. Massive, right? It's just huge. Now, if there are enterprises that help that to work effectively, right, that let these 50% of the population be really successful at not working 9 to 5, but being successful as being independent practitioners, they can get fed, they have insurance, they have some retirement that works. Let's say an insurance company can find a way to serve that population effectively and create entirely new approaches to serving these kind of needs.
Income protection might in the future be something like, hey, you did your university degree, you studied to become a lawyer, but hey, now all digital due diligence is happening in the virtual world and there's less of a need for lawyers. Could we insure against that type of robotic or technological unemployment in the future?
The way the world and economies work is changing, and it's going to change the markets that we serve. There are new needs we could be paying a lot more attention to. Digital solutions offer insurers the chance to expand their reach and positive social impact to people who are currently uninsured.
Smartness is coming into everything, from our cars to drones that are flying around into the air, in our watches. Our phones are doing unimaginable things. We can print things on one side of the world and that we source from somewhere else completely. So smart everything is one of the most exciting things for me. And I think that what we're going to see next is smartness coming to the 3 billion people who currently aren't connected to the internet. The financial services industry is perhaps worried about how it's going to affect their current market and clients, but I think that the more interesting opportunity is how smartness is going to affect their next 3 billion clients in the sector. So who are the people that are currently uninsured that could have access to these services that they never had before? What about the people that are uninsured who could have much more opportunities for convenient access to short-term insurance perhaps, or smarter insurance that adapts to your needs rather than something that you buy once and that doesn't adapt as you go along?
There's this whole bunch of young people, previously uninsured people, that might be the early adopters for the more micro-insurance type products, and you can start building a portfolio of your services with them, which could be very beneficial to both parties.
I think there's a lot of room for technology to actually be able to cut down on the cost and make insurance a lot more affordable, and thus enabling micro-insurance, which thus means that insurance could be a lot more ubiquitous than it already is.
So individual needs in our traditional markets are evolving. We also see a shift and reconfiguration from individual to collective need, driven by quite profound changes in how people live their lives today.
So, for example, if you're providing a healthcare product to someone who's elderly, yes, you need to deliver the kind of benefits that might be needed by that individual, but also, their children also have a very strong need to ensure that their elderly parents are in good shape, or if they're in trouble, they get assistance. So these sort of family, multiple stakeholders in the products and solutions that we're uncovering through our ethnographic research is something rather different and new.
We turn longevity around and talk about intergenerational. So longevity is about how do you deal with families over generations, and families in the broadest modern sense. So a family today is a collection of people who call themselves a family, and they're not all married with 2 kids living in a semi-detached house on the road. We have all sorts of interesting relationships these days in modern families. What's really powerful though is the tax and regulatory regime that we all live in has not kept up in the same way to deal with that. So what people need to understand is what are the consequences of the things they're trying to achieve as a collective group between the youngest and the oldest in that group, and how do we help advise them do that? That could be really powerful. And you don't start that conversation by saying, here's a product.
Well, what happens if we don't underwrite products and risk? What happens if we underwrite a person or a household? Is that even possible? People have a very disjointed and fragmented set of individual relationships with the industry. And so we said Our view is we have to help people understand what they should and shouldn't be using insurance for as a starting point. You have an amount of money that you can spend on, food and health and clothing, etc., and you have an amount of money that you spend on insurance. And you should be spending that in the optimal way. You should be using that as effectively as possible. And when you look at it from that point of view, people are wasting an enormous amount of money because they're insuring things that they shouldn't insure. They've got insurance that covers them things that are never going to happen to them, so why are they paying for it? They've got duplication, they've got insurance for the same thing in 3 different places, et cetera, et cetera. So when you take that sort of holistic view of a household and what their risks are, and you start to think about it as an integrated, holistic problem, you come up with some very different answers for how insurance should work. But that creates a huge manufacturing challenge because the industry manufactures this way.
And then there are entirely new needs that are very particular to the digital era we live in. Needs that we wouldn't have thought about a few years ago, but that now seem very real and much more pressing.
So I may no longer be worried about, on a personal level, my house burning down as much as I'm worried about my identity moving and shifting without my knowing it. Yeah? And so that change has happened just within the past 5 years, I'd say. Whereas people have owned homes for hundreds of years and have been concerned about losing their home to some unforeseen event, they're now waking up and realizing that it's their identity, or it could be some opportunity, or maybe it's their data that they want protected.
There are things that we haven't prepared ourselves for, and things like DNA testing and how that may impact life insurers in the future. What do we do with it? How do we respond?
Well, how and when do we respond? These are big questions. We really want to talk to you about digital. Call your local Gen Re office to make that happen, or get in touch with me direct. And please join me in the next podcast to hear more insights.